Like, would you have a problem with a first grade class reading a story, a fairy tale where two princes end up falling in love rather than a prince and a princess?
Yes,
But you wouldn't have a problem with it
they don't
being
have the nuance of knowing that
you
that
wouldn't
just
have a
means
problem
they
with it being a
exist.
prince and a princess, though.
No, because I think
That's
that's
homophobic,
not
nail it
that
to
it's
nail.
in nature, but that it is the natural way to be. It's the
That's
standard
an
way.
unprovable statement. How you think people in
Yes.
your position should
Yes.
act, how society acts, your decisions are
You
driven
got to take
by
it a step further back, though.
for
Why
what?
are you interpreting the way people are acting towards you in that way?
I am Brandon Clark. This is my co-host Swall Hall, and today we're meeting on uncommon ground. So a lot has happened in the last week and a half or so. I feel like it fluctuates week on week. Some weeks there's nothing. Some weeks there's everything. There was leaked chats on Signal. Battle plans nonetheless. I guess there's arguments over if it's classified or not. I'm not sure if me and Swall will disagree there. We have Liberation Day tariffs. If you haven't heard Trump call them Liberation Day, it's just tariffs, more of them, like he's been announcing and threatening for weeks now. But I guess we're being liberated by them. So we'll get into those discussions. And then we kind of just want to step back from specific things going on in the week and kind of just talk about the hyper partisan, kind of tribalistic nature that we've seen in politics from both sides, where the left is kind of in their droves and the right is in their droves, and there's not really any meeting in the middle anymore, which used to kind of define politics. And then we're going to end with a debate on, does LGBTQ awareness, education, whatever you want to call it, does it belong in schools? If it does, to what extent? If it doesn't, why not? Those kinds of things will be our debate that we end on. So make sure you stick around for that. We're going to start with the Signal chats because it's dominated the media sphere this last week or so. So we'll talk about that first. It's all I've talked about on my channel. For those who don't know, I'm sure most do, there was a group chat, a Signal group chat, which is a public unsecured app for communicating. On here, multiple members in Trump's administration, Mike Waltz, who is, I think, national security, Pete Hegseth is over DOD, Stephen Miller, a bunch of people in the administration were using this to communicate battle plans about a bomb strike they were going to do in Yemen, which maybe at first sounds normal. But the problems arise when you realize first, in 2023, a memo was released by the Department of Defense that said, hey, don't use Signal for communications like this. And then also in this chat, probably why you shouldn't use things like Signal, a journalist was added to this chat, a very anti-Trump journalist at that. Thank God he didn't leak the chats before the attack, nothing like that. But he was in the chat that kind of questions national security. There's questions about was what's in the chat classified? Was it not classified? Swat, what did you think hearing this? And then I guess we'll go from there because there's like multiple layers, like it happening, the
Right.
response, all of that. But let's start with what when it happened. What were your thoughts?
Well, I wish I could say I was surprised, but the unfortunate thing is with this administration and honestly just with where our country's at, I'm not all that surprised
Yeah.
that they're using a public messaging app to discuss things like war plans, which is absolutely, I mean, asinine. Yeah, they're trying to downplay this like this is not a big deal, but obviously, I mean, we're talking about people's lives that could be in danger with plans getting out into the open. And I mean, like you said, thankfully the journalist was had at least a little integrity to not just start blasting out all this stuff because like who added this journalist into the chat? Like I'm so confused
Yeah.
to begin with
So
if it's an
Mike Waltz
anti
added him.
guy.
Yeah.
But okay, and is he not with Trump?
He
Why
is.
would he?
Yeah. He is like, I think national security. He's like, he's a cabinet member. I think it's national
Yeah, so
security. Yeah.
why would he add somebody who's not even yeah, it's insane. So yeah, the
So
whole thing is very concerning.
Mike Waltz, he went on Fox News and he talked about this. I'm curious what you think of his response. He said not only did he like not knowledgeably add him, but his theory was that his number just got, and this is like almost verbatim, that his number got sucked in to the group chat.
Mm,
What do you think
mm.
of that explanation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I hate when numbers are always getting sucked different places. I mean, that's just the worst thing.
I
But
heard
what
that
is
and I
he
was like,
talking about?
bro, you didn't ask anyone under 25 for what your
Yeah,
explanation should be. No one under 25 is buying that number got sucked into your phone.
it makes no sense. Now, obviously, we've all done group chats. There's times when you go to add like Jim White and you accidentally add Jim Whitty or
Yeah.
something, sure. Just say that. Say we were trying to add such and such, misclicked. I mean, that's
Mhm.
still embarrassing, but like at least that's something like real. Cause like, yeah, random numbers don't just get added. But yeah, I mean, I feel like somebody needs to be held responsible in some sort of way. I'm just
Yep.
not sure who the blame lies with. I mean, I guess ultimately with Trump, but we're not. It's not like they're
Yep.
gonna push him
Yeah,
out for this.
and that kind of gets into the response, which a lot of people were taken back by the response as well, to kind of start from where it started at to where we're at now. Because I'm not sure. I know you had said, you've been busy this last week. I don't know if you maybe had missed one or two of these. Pete Hegseth, when this first happened, the journalist first released an article saying I was added to the group chat, but he didn't leak any of the chats. Pete
Right.
Hegseth comes out that day and defames the journalist, calls him like, fake news, all of that. And then specifically says he's lying, like says that never happened. So they start out flat out lying about this, just thinking,
Right.
okay, we're just going to lie. Then you have, I think Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, they come out and once, a little bit more came out and we realized, okay, we can't just say it didn't happen. They're saying, well, nothing was classified. There were no classified battle plans on there or anything. I am curious. So then, what you think of the response? Where I agree with you. What I've said on my channels. I think somebody has to get fired. Whether it's Mike Waltz, Pete
Absolutely.
Hegseth, a resignation needs turned in. Someone needs fired. Something like that. And had Trump just done that off the get go, I think this would have just blown over because not really much came from
Right.
it. But it's the response to me. So I'm curious what you thought of just Pete Hegseth coming out lying, them saying none of it's classified. Even now, you have them trying to say, well, is it classified when it's so
Right.
clearly classified?
Yeah, and it's funny because you'd almost think that that would be the Trumpish thing to do, which would be to
Yeah,
scapegoat
you're
one of the other
fired.
guys. Yeah, yeah. Like I'm kind of surprised that he would take the approach of digging in his heels and trying to make himself. But at the same time, is it really all that surprising that he's trying to make himself look like the victim and like he didn't actually do anything wrong?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I guess you said Mike Waltz is the national security guy. I feel like this is a national security incident. I feel like
Yep.
he's the guy, or at least, well, yeah, he was in the chat and they say that he added him. So yeah, I would get rid of
it's
him.
it's in the thing. It's like in the when the journalist did end up when they said they weren't classified, he leaked the chats or whatever, posted them on the article, and in
Sure.
the very top you see Mike Waltz added. I forget what it is, Jeffrey Goldberg or something like that. So it's like it's clear as
Like we
day.
got you, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think he should be fired. I think Trump should do it, and like you said, then he can just move on and be like, yeah, see, I got rid of the, drain in the swamp. I got rid of the whatever he wants to say, and it plays in his favor, in my opinion. So
And
that's what I would do.
what I've worked out, the only thing I think why he hasn't done this is Miriam Adelson donated $100 million to his campaign. Part of that, a lot of people are thinking, is that she wanted to pick a couple of the cabinet members. Those
Right.
cabinet members were Mike Waltz, Marco Rubio. Again, obviously this would all be backrooms, none confirmed. But if
Right.
this
It's
is
all
to be so,
conjecture,
those
but
were the ones. I could see that maybe Trump doesn't want to go against his donor because I agree with you. I think it would be Trumpian almost to just come out and just fire the dude personally, put all the blame on them, say, I had nothing to do about it. I don't get
right.
why he wanted to bite the bullet so hard on this because it also seems like you had said, like a political win for him. He could say, I'm draining the swamp, everyone who's responsible, I'm getting rid of them because this is inexcusable. And then it would have blown
Right.
over in
It's
one
all
day.
about merit and no more DEI
And that's the funniest part is,
right.
is those clips are circulating again of Pete Hegseth saying like, we're going to make sure the Department of Defense only has the best members. And then it's him coming out and literally lying about
Yeah.
leaking group chats because he doesn't want to admit it. I personally think as the head of the Department of Defense, I think the buck for something like this stops with Pete Hegseth. I mean, obviously like Trump, but yeah, Pete Hegseth is
Sure.
the guy who's doing the battle plans, the communications. When the military has its own secure communication systems, there was a congressman who had served and he had went on CNN. I'd covered this on my channel, and he said that they go as far to like the generals and stuff, like, and Hegseth as the head of DOD would have phones in their own house with like
Right.
a
Special
syncom
line.
or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, special communication. So it's like, why are we using Signal in the first place? But yeah, I just think somebody has to be fired. To that note, though, I guess the last thing we could touch on before we move on, the White House spokesperson, Carolyn Levitt, she's came out,
Hmm.
said they're not even looking into it anymore, that as far as they're concerned, the investigation is over, that it's just a partisan attack on them. And as of right now, from what we know, nobody's been fired. There's been no reprimands. So it's just getting left at that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, probably what's going to happen is, the news cycle being as quick as it is, this will probably just go away, which is unfortunate because the American people deserve better. And like you said, I just think somebody needs to own up to this, even if it was like, of course, I'd like for him to be fired, but even if it was just like them being honest about it and
Yeah.
saying, this is just what happened, we're not firing anybody, people make mistakes, yada, yada, yada. Okay, fine. But
Mhm.
like lying about it, doubling down like two or three times when it's so obvious. Oh, the number got sucked in by magic. Like, what are you talking about, dude?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like, obviously, I'd be like, come on, if you didn't fire him, but I would at
Yeah,
least be like, that's better than coming out and
right.
saying none of that happened.
Right.
He was
Gaslighting the
lying.
country.
Yeah, like that's the insane part to me is that Hegseth can come out. He came out, defamed the journalist, and then said he was lying. And that's just crazy to me. But yeah, and as you said, news cycle will move on. Something it will move on to is the Liberation Day. We are
Absolutely.
one
New holiday, baby.
exactly. Put it on your calendars now. Get in early for the celebrations because we're being liberated by economic freedom? No. Democracy? No. Tariffs. Tariffs are going to liberate us. Trump, he's been announcing tariffs for months now. The entire presidency, it seems. He's been threatening them. He'll implement them. He'll roll them back. After he delayed his last set of tariffs, this was the beginning of March, he set early April as the day. Throughout, it became April 2nd is the day that he's going to do it. And he's called it Liberation Day because it's kind of evolved as the weeks have to where it's not exact. I guess Carolyn Levitt did come out a day or two ago and say, well, we won't know exactly what they are till Trump comes out. But what's been discussed is flat 20% tariffs on anything that comes into the country, like any import. Is
Mhm.
specifically he's mentioned things like pharmaceuticals and cars, which is insane when we'll get into. But then also the crazier part to me is the reciprocal tariff part, where this is what Liberation Day is. Any country that has a tariff on us, we're going to reciprocate with an equal tariff. So if a country has a 30% tariff on us, we're going to put a 30% tariff on them. I have to know your thoughts on this because I think it's insanely stupid and just not really doesn't follow any economic theory. But what are your thoughts on a whole Liberation Day, revenge tariffs, and all that?
Yeah, well, actually, the number I had seen was 25% for
It's
vehicles and car parts. So it's actually worse. At least that's the number I saw.
it could be, yeah.
Um, but yeah, my views have changed on this quite a bit, and I never had super strong ones because I was never all that familiar with tariffs. But I've kind of, as I've, grown in my Catholicism, my views have started to kind of change a little bit. And so while I do, commend the idea of wanting to support, our local, I guess our local industries and try to keep things stateside, of course, that's something that I think we all are down with. I am now of the belief that we kind of need to balance the scales between, you know, uh, nationalism and our own economies with global cooperation and working with the rest of the world because we're not here on an island. I mean, continent wise we are, but you know what I mean. We're not here on an island by
Yes.
ourselves. And so, yeah, I don't like this idea of pettiness of, oh, you got to put a 30% tariff on us. 30% tariff on you. It's literally like the old playground. Like, I know you are, but what am I? Just
Yeah.
pointing back. And that's kind of what his economic theory here is amounting to is some playground antics. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll eat my words and this will be a big liberating day and we're all going to get big chunks of change somehow and it's going to trickle down and it's going to be great. But like you said, the top economists don't seem to think this is a good idea. I know you and I have discussed it and you've told me about how it went the first time around,
Mhm.
not to great results. And so I am very, very dubious of this so-called Liberation Day. Feels more like an April Fool's joke since it's yeah, so
Right.
close to that.
Should have been April 1st. But yeah,
Right.
no, I actually completely agree with you. I guess, I mean, my focus is like a little less on like globalization, so to speak. Not that I'm against, I'm fine with, there being a
Sure.
global economy rather than country to country. My thing is more just on like, it's not economically feasible for like a lot of reasons. And infrastructure is the biggest one. And then just like real quick to not like dive into economics 101, typically where tariffs are seen effective is matched with like investment, infrastructure investment. For instance, you tariff electric vehicles and then you invest heavily in electric vehicle manufacturing in America. You tariff semiconductors, and then you invest in semiconductors in America, right? This is where it's beneficial because you're investing in the manufacturing coming to America, and then you're incentivizing companies to choose that over what they would have to then pay more. And the tariff is supposed to raise the price of the foreign good to where if you're buying that, you're paying more than what you're going to pay if you buy it in America. That works. It's really niche, right? You can't do it to a lot of things. There are some markets we can do it in. Electric vehicles is a great example of that. When you're just doing across the board tariffs, you're just you're removing any benefit you could get from them. Like if you're doing steel, China could tariff us 50% on steel because China can produce steel for really, really cheap. We can't. If we tariff China 30% on steel, we're just losing we're losing any exports we made from steel, which is probably very little in the first place. But then we're also making steel more expensive for us to get, which it's going to hurt auto manufacturers who rely on steel, manufacturers of anything that relies on steel, which affects their jobs, affects their things. And then you got to think if we're tariffing the materials to manufacture the things here, but then we're also tariffing the things. So it's more expensive to get them abroad, but also more expensive to make them here. You're just going to cause a recession, a manufacturing recession, which as we spoke to is literally what happened last time because he did this exact same stupid shit. You have to target them really, really well. And it seems that Trump likes the word tariff for some reason. I don't know why. I think it's just because the left doesn't like it, which is also kind of weird to me because in Obama's days, around NAFTA, the left were tariff. We were the tariff people, and the right was anti-tariff, free trade. And I just don't get what caused this 180.
I mean, it's literally just the pendulum swing. Most of the politicians don't actually have any actual views. They just want to do what the other guy's not doing. I mean, there's the old point that a lot of conservatives try to bring up, which is just a non-point, which is always like, well, it used to be the Republicans who cared about, the marginalized groups and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, used to be, okay?
Like they say that as they're flying their Confederate flag.
It's like used to be. That's not where we're at today. So like, who cares?
Exactly.
It's the same kind of thing where they just keep flip-flopping views and the label. Mm-hmm. The label's kind of irrelevant. You just have to look at what they're actually saying at this point. But yeah, I think, like you said, it's going to lead to higher consumer prices, might lead to some trade wars. I mean, it's hard to see any of the beneficial things he thinks are going to happening from this. But again, I'm willing to be wrong, but not making any bets.
I hope I'm wrong, right? I hope that we're so wrong.
Right.
But yeah, it confuses me because when NAFTA was signed, I was too young to give a shit about NAFTA, to be fair. But when Trump signed, when he reversed NAFTA and did the USMCA, NAFTA was pretty heavy on tariffs. The USMCA was pretty close to NAFTA, but removed some of the tariffs. And I always thought that was one of the good things Trump did. The USMCA, the Mexico agreement, this is one of the good things, because I agree that free trade is probably better than protectionism.
Right.
Trump now is going on a whole run of who signed this shitty trade deal that we're in. And it's it was you. It was literally you that signed it, buddy. And it was one of the things I thought you did that was good. But like you said, and it's weird how the pendulum swings because it's there's no rhyme or reason.
No, it's random.
It's not swinging. You think maybe you're changing to be right. You were wrong. You realize you were wrong. And now you're changing to be right. No, it's just you want to be contrarian. You want to be opposite of the other.
And it's very irritating for people like me who obviously I'm supposed to be the conservative on the show, but it's I'm sort of politically homeless. I'm sure you've heard that phrase going around because it's some of the views that I thought were conservative values, Republican, even I was never really a Republican, but my parents were. I grew up that way. I used to be hardcore libertarian and stuff, and sort of this everything free. Now the right's what are you talking about? We don't want any of that. America first, nationalism. Actually, we are going to have a bunch of heavy government, but it's just in the ways that we want. You sort of off topic, but you've got people, talking about theocracies and wanting to make it. People talking about I'm actually pro monarchy now. It's on the right. Yeah. I'm what are you talking about? Yeah. We're supposed to be the individual liberty, freedom,
small government.
Nobody can make me do anything type of guys.
Yeah.
and now you're saying actually they can, and it should be a king. It's like,
Hmm.
whoa.
Yeah, and I just quickly piggyback off that. I completely agree with you. It's almost insane how Republicans went from big, like they were small government, to now it's like, I feel like they still think they're small government because they
Right.
want to give all the power to one person. And they're like, well, if one person has all the power, it's small. But it's like
Right.
they want to give Trump this astronomical amount of like power, government overreach, where he can like shut down universities, shut down private businesses, like all of this. And I just
And
think that's
protesters
insane.
at universities, dude. What the
Deporting,
heck?
yeah, like
Yeah.
disappearing protesters who haven't even been accused of crimes. And it is an insane time to be alive, that's for sure. But we are about to be liberated from it all. So,
That's true. That's true. Just one more day.
right. And then it'll all be better. Yeah. Did you have anything else on tariffs that we could jump over to?
No, I mean, just disappointment across the board. And I feel like these episodes are going to keep going this way. And eventually, we're going to have to add a third member who actually disagrees with us.
That's why I was trying to ask you because I felt quick tidbit. I was trying to ask you before the show because I was like, I feel like the last couple episodes, man, I don't
Yeah.
want to feel like I'm steamrolling him with topics where he can't
No,
defend the conservatives. Like, but it's
it's
just
just
been
the state of affairs. It's not your fault. It's just
yeah.
their fault. Like, maybe we'll have a good summer, you know?
Right. Keep your hope on the future, right?
Right.
When the tax cuts pass, I'm sure we'll have something to
Right.
argue about.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so hyperpartisanism, that's not a word. Hyper tribalism in politics. I'm making words here. Yeah, no. The tribalism that we see in politics, I don't think like it really needs explained to anyone. It's super obvious. The left, I think, more so uses the term cult, right? For the right.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
that's more, but there's cults on the left too, right? I just think both sides are so condensed into their side that meeting in the middle is like it's a fantasy now where it's weird because that used to be like not only the goal, but it used to be seen as a political win. And now you're seen as politically weak if you're willing to
Right.
negotiate with the other side. So I'm curious what you think of the tribalism in politics. I guess you can start with voters or politicians, wherever you want to take it. We can kind of go from there. Just what are your thoughts on how it's kind of dividing things?
Yeah, starting with the voters, I mean, obviously we saw starting in 2016, but really ramping up in the 2020 election of a cult of personality around Donald Trump. Obviously, he had his fanboys first term, but people kind of needed to get him in the office before they were like Trump or die. And yeah, I've never been a Trumper. I've always just been a conservative who will support the conservative guy within reason.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think this is a dangerous mentality. And like you said, it is now the case where if a Trumper gives in at all and wants to make a deal with the other side, now they're just a traitor. You know, they just betrayed and not just betrayed Donald Trump, but people see it as analogous to betrayal of
The
the country. I
country.
mean, you
Yep.
remember with January 6th when they're talking about hanging Mike Pence and like
Yep.
because he's a traitor, like this is 1776, like it's that serious, and it's like all the guy wanted to do was his job, but to them that makes you a traitor, and so and in a different way you see this on the left where instead of attaching it to a person it's to certain beliefs and ideologies where if you don't fall in line with these specific
Yep.
sets even if
Mhm.
you get like 75% of them the one thing you don't agree on and I've experienced this where I'm like I agree with socialized healthcare. I agree with free education. I agree with, not necessarily food stamps as it is now, but like that type of
Yeah.
welfare programs. I agree with gay marriage being legalized, or at least civil unions if you want to go that way. Whatever. I think all of that's fine. But then I say, which we'll get into later, oh, I don't think maybe we should teach LGBT stuff in schools. Now I'm done. It's over for
Mhm.
me
Yeah.
because I've stepped over the line. And so you see it on both sides. With the politicians, it's way more based on money and who's supporting who and backdoor dealings. But of course, you still get people who are young and dumb who get into politics who have this hyper idealized way of thinking as well. So it's just going to get worse, I think, before
Yeah.
it gets better. But
Mhm.
hopefully, I think our generation and even Gen Alpha and now we're in beta.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll turn the tides a little bit and realize that the common good and people working together is what makes our country great, all these different personalities and views. So those are my thoughts.
I completely agree. I want to start with the left, just so it doesn't feel like I'm railroading the right.
Sure.
Because to your point, one, you were spot on. You actually, a lot of what I have written that I was going to say about the left, you hit the nail on the head. It does exist on the left. I think a lot of people on the left make the mistake of trying to say, well, we're not a cult of personalities, or we're not.
Right.
And so there's, I think, and I don't know to the extent this exists on the right, but on the left, there's like very much two factions, right? Where there's like the far left, like the
Yep.
progressives, and then there's like the
Yep.
Biden, the Clinton left, right?
Yep.
And those two disagree.
Democrats.
Yeah, exactly. Like Democrats, literally, and then like leftists, right?
Yes.
And for what you're describing, very much represents like the far left, where everything, I call them the litmus left or the litmus test left. Like,
Yep.
even though I would probably identify, I'm like somewhere in the middle, but aside the point, they'll do these, like you said, these litmus tests where you could believe that homelessness shouldn't exist. You can believe that starvation shouldn't exist, that everyone should have health care. But if you don't think like a trans woman should compete with other women,
Right.
you're out. And I understand to some extent, I guess, if you're taking it to the extreme of like politics reflect morality, and if your politics are bad, your morals are probably
Right.
bad. I think it's self-defeating,
Hmm.
first and foremost in politics, to do that, because you're never going to make any bit of like a constituency that can win. If you're like, well, if we disagree on anything, because you're not going to disagree. I mean, you're not going to agree with everything with anybody.
Right.
I've never seen anyone I agree with everyone on, even if I'm looking like third party candidates or whatever. Like I hate Jill Stein's opinion on like Russia, Ukraine, on Syria,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
There's not going to be this fantasy perfect candidate or whatever. And as the left, even with liberals, this is, I guess, when we come more to like the Democrats, and on my channel, we call them the libs, it's like a dirty word for progressives, but like the more middle left, it's the judgment. I think they'll judge both the far left. You see it a lot on X where they're like, well, how dare you didn't vote for Kamala? This is all your fault. But then
Right.
there's like and this is where I think the cult of the left really comes through, is it's like a lesser than attitude almost to people who aren't on their side. Like if you say you're a conservative, they'll be like, in the back of their mind, they're like, oh, okay, he's, not as smart as me, or he's,
Right.
racist or whatever it may be. And something I've realized, because I used to do this too. I used to frankly just think, okay, if you're a conservative, you have to be really dumb. You don't know what you're talking about, or you're racist or rich, right? But what I've learned is like, no, I mean, one, for the most part, we all want the same things. At least,
Hmm.
like, if those in the middle class typically want the same things, we want economic freedom, we want the country to be safe, we want our children to have better opportunities than we had. And it's just like the means of getting there, right? And like, so I
Exactly.
think that, and a lot of it does with like, positive liberty, negative liberty. I think that government can help us get there. Conservatives typically think government prevents us from getting there. That's the crux of the disagreement. And I think if the left could understand that, rather than like, right now it's Trump, like our cult is formed around being anti-Trump. Before that, it was like, I don't know, like anti-billionaire, like a attack, Occupy
Hmm.
Wall Street
Hmm.
was like a big thing. So it just goes from like one thing to the other. On the right, I do think it's more dangerous because I won't say you guys because you're very much not in that, but on the right, they coalesce more around personality, which is what I think
Yes.
is really dangerous, because you get someone like Trump he's a reality TV star. He can sell it to the moon with personality. He knows exactly what to say to appeal to you. But then behind the scenes, he's cutting Medicare, he's closing Social Security, he's like things that you might rely on, to where, like, for me, where I think it gets dangerous is where like rural voters, for instance, they overwhelmingly rely on Medicaid. They
Hmm.
overwhelmingly will be hurt by tariffs, but yet they still support these things just because it's the Republican doing them. And that's where I think the tribalism hurts us, and then it prevents conversations that need to be had.
Yeah, it's dangerous because it's kind of like single issue voting, which, if the issue's great enough, I guess I can understand. But something I liked about Nikki Haley when she was in the primaries, and why she was the candidate I supported for the right wing, was because something like abortion, where obviously, like, if you're like me, even before I was Catholic, I mean, people have seen the debate on your channel, super pro-life, big thing for me. But while I think all abortion should be banned across the board, I live in the real world and I
Mhm.
understand that there's, half the country, if not slightly more, maybe slightly less, it's the numbers, whatever, 51%, 49, who disagree with me. And but maybe they, 25% of those guys agree with a 12-week ban. And it's like, okay, here's a place of common agreement. Let's shake hands and all agree on 12 month. And then we can work socially to, convince people through, debate and conversation to maybe get it down to an 8-week, or, if they want to try to get it up to 16, whatever. And you can kind of work from there and be willing to work with people.
Yep.
And that's where the country thrives. We have to be able to see what both sides want and then come to an agreement. I mean, it's like a marriage. You have to be able to compromise or else you're getting divorced.
Yeah.
And, we already tried that once in the 19th century
Yeah.
with the Civil War. I'm not trying to do another country divorce. So let's
Yes.
try to avoid that if we can. So, yeah, I think it's super dangerous on the Republican side because they don't even care about the issues. Like you said, whatever Trump says is the issue. So he could have them voting for things that, I mean, like you said, that don't align with their interest, or they don't even know what they're talking about.
Mhm.
And they'll still be supporting it as if it's life or death. And yeah, even with
But
January 6th, might even literally put themselves in dangerous situations over views that they don't really hold.
yeah, and I was just gonna say an example of that is, as someone who has a channel, I don't know how many times I get comments on my channel like defending tariffs, and then I'll just be like, "Who pays the tariff? Who pays the tariff?" And they'll
Right,
be like, "Well, China does the country," and it's like, okay, you guys just
right,
support tariffs because Trump does.
right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think somewhere along the line, we forgot, America as a whole kind of forgot what unity is. And they started kind of trying to chase like egalitarianism, like a sense of oneness. Like we all, American is defined by these traits and we all have to fit into these things and be the same. When unity, at least for America, it's always been about the understanding that we are different, that we can be different,
Yes.
and that we can settle those differences through debate, through discussion, like you said, through
Hmm.
having conversations and finding middle ground, finding common ground, like the purpose of this
Right.
podcast. But yeah, somewhere along the way, it became like, no, I have to force you to believe what I believe, or else we can't get along. I also get a lot of comments that's literally like you said, it's time for a divorce. Like the right and the left cannot coexist. And it's like, I don't
Yeah.
think some people understand how batshit crazy it is to like say that out loud
Right.
and think that it's normal.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I won't say his name, but I have my best friend. I have a buddy. He's like dead set on leaving the country because he's basically come to the that same conclusion, but more of America is a failed project. It's a failed experiment. These many people with these many different views can't agree. And it's funny because he's actually I don't know if leftist. He's not a far leftist. He's probably more like a liberal, Democrat sort of
Mhm.
guy. Um, but to me, that it starts to sound far rightish when you start talking
Yep.
like that, because then it gets to, okay, so then who should live in America?
Yep.
And then they start talking about, well, it's all the different cultures coming together. And
Multiculturalism.
then
Yep.
it's like, okay, so which culture? Well, the original Europe, and then, but it's like, but you're a Democrat. Now
It's like,
you're
oh,
making
so
it
you're a
sound like,
Nazi. You're a
right,
neo
right. But
Nazi.
it comes all the way around.
Yep.
So it's like you go so, but I won't even say that that's far left. You go in a certain direction left that
Yep.
you come around to right again,
Yeah.
and it starts to sound crazy. And
Here's
I get it
here's
from both sides.
Here's the credence I'll give you to the right. I think it's more on the right now, which is why I think the right gets the bad rep for it. But I don't
Yeah,
think it's a political thing. I think when we talk about the horseshoe, I think on either
yeah,
side, you reach a point where like it becomes apolitical and you're stepping
yeah,
more into just like conspiracy,
yeah.
and like Nazism a lot of the time.
Right,
Like,
right.
like because you'll get
And my
people on,
friend's not a Nazi, by the way.
yeah,
He
no,
he's
yeah,
just saying like the two sides disagree, and I'm
yeah.
tired of the tension, so I'm
Some
just
people
gonna
just don't
leave.
know any better. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't understand that maybe what I'm saying is the same argument used as people for more
Right.
nefarious reasons or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, and I completely agree with you. And that's on both sides. And that's another problem, I think, with kind of getting into this hyper tribalistic, is it also pushes you further from the middle and closer to those sides where,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we see it more so on the right. Like, I mean, it's like the predominant leading thing of the right. It exists very much so on the left, but like, I
I mean,
can't
I
think of
would
anyone.
concede. I would agree with that. I think it is
Yeah.
way more on the right.
Because for me, I can't think of anyone in a position of power for the Democrats that I would consider far left. Like the furthest left is like AOC or like Bernie
Right.
Sanders.
That's actually the first person I thought in my head,
Yeah,
and I was like, yeah, but even she's just like, she's like at the door of far left, about
that's
to
what I'm
open it.
saying.
You
It's like
know?
you couldn't. like you couldn't
She wants to,
seriously, yeah, you
but
couldn't, I
she
don't
no,
think you
she
could
can't.
seriously say that she's like, I don't know, like communist or whatever, right? Like she would socialize more things than the right would, but like,
Right.
yeah. So did you have anything else you wanted to talk about with
No, I
tribalism or?
mean, my last thing, I guess, would just be like, you know, we need to remember as a country that, again, our differences are what strengthen us, and that is the beauty. And I know you talked about, I forget which word you used, but basically, it's,
Egalitarianism.
yes, all having like, oh, this is what it means to be American. To me, we only need to have that in one way, which is kind of what you said right after that, which is we just need to realize that being an American means accepting that everybody else has different views than you and we can all live together with those different views. As long as we agree on that, then I feel like that is what it means to be an American. That's what makes America so different from every other country, is because of the way that those historically came about. They're just way more homogenized, way more, I mean, obviously, as the world has expanded, more people live in different countries, but still, I mean, you go to Europe, it's mostly Europeans. You
Mm.
go to Mexico, it's mostly Mexicans. Like,
Yep.
America's really the only place where it's like so much of everybody.
Yeah.
I mean everybody, and I think that's a good thing, but it's also can be a weakness. So yeah,
I completely agree. I think that I mean, it's always a good thing to obviously be more diverse. That's kind of what we see. And for people who want to push, it's weird. It's hard to define as to not be a neo-Nazi and define what it means to be an American is almost impossible
right,
because like what does it mean to be an American? Like, I don't know. If you support like liberal beliefs, like not like obviously liberal in terms of politics, but in terms of like freedom, right? Like we should
right.
have freedom for life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that, democratic things. I don't even know what I would consider to be like an American. If you can assimilate and you aren't like destroying America, right? It's weird because if you ask a lot of people like that do get into the multiculturalism and things like that, they'll get into a lot of white centric ideas for what it means to be an American, like the
Yeah, I mean, and
purity
you
of it
use
all.
that word assimilate, but it's like, what does that even mean? Because
Exactly. And that's what I
like,
said it. And then I was like, yeah, but what does that even? Yeah, exactly. It's
and
hard
that's
to,
why I think people just need to get it through their heads that, again, it just means realizing, oh, I can't force my neighbor who lives next door to celebrate Easter
yeah.
or
Yeah.
Ramadan.
And
But it's
exactly because
okay that he celebrates Ramadan and I
exactly.
celebrate Easter.
And
That's it. You know?
exactly. Because it's like whenever I think also of like Americanism and like patriotism, right? And like what makes you proud to be an American, what I think is so far removed from what like people talk about nowadays. Like for me, it's like the shit that makes me proud to like fly an American flag is like crushing Nazi skulls and shit, like destroying
Right.
fascism and shit. Like nowadays it's like, I don't know, we're the greatest country in the world because we make so much money and it's like,
Right.
I don't know, we make a lot of money because we don't fucking provide benefits to our workers the way other countries do or pay for the same social
Right.
programs. And all of that is like, that makes me want to hide my American flag. But like, if we're talking about like crushing Nazi skulls, then I'm here to fly an American flag. But then you have a party with Elon Musk flying a Nazi salute.
Hmm.
And everyone's like, well, it wasn't really a Nazi salute. And it's just, I don't know. And Elon Musk to this day, as the last rant off topic, Elon Musk to this day has not said, no, it wasn't a Nazi salute. So we'll leave
It
that be.
wasn't a Nazi salute.
Yeah, so we'll get to the debate though, I guess. We won't
Yep.
go too long. Gender in schools. That's what I wrote on my notes for whatever reason.
No
LGBT.
boys or girls in
Yeah.
school.
No genders, right? Yeah,
Only the
we're all just humans.
non-binaries.
We're eliminating pronouns in school.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, just LGBTQ. I didn't know whether to put awareness or education. If you want to focus on one, we can. I guess I kind of just meant, for me, I just meant like umbrella, just it
Yeah.
being in school, right? Like I spoke to you about the post I shared. I don't know if you looked at it, but
I did. Yeah.
it was just kind of, for what I got from that was it was just people were mad just about the flags being flown, teachers wearing the pride outfit and
Hmm.
stuff. I don't see any problem with this. I actually only see benefit. I guess per typical, I'll let you start with what your position is, because one, I don't really know, so I
Yeah.
don't want to like attack things that aren't your position. So yeah, just lay out what you think.
Yeah. Well, so my views are nuanced. Hopefully, everybody can handle that. I
Mhm.
think that when we're dealing with any age group that is below high school, so that would be, well, let's not deal with age, but that would be under, ninth grade.
Mhm.
In ninth grade and above, set that to the side for now. Eighth graders and below, in my opinion, is not the time or the place for teachers to be discussing their personal religious views, their personal political views, or anything like that. I think that at that level, you should be focused on education, preparing the kids for high school, and there shouldn't be too much about that. When we get into high school, I think that their brains are starting to develop. This is where we should start to challenge kids and present them with beliefs that they may not agree with. This is when you should have them, read difficult books like, stuff by Dostoevsky or, Les Mis, where you're dealing with morality and all these, and start to have them form their worldviews on their own with the support of the people who are supposed to be, supporting their growth, teachers, parents, etc. And so for that reason, I don't think that the school should do too much as it pertains to LGBTQ stuff when it comes to elementary schools for sure, but even going into like fifth or sixth, seventh grade, because I just think that their brains are too malleable and they don't have enough self-respect and a lot of times to stay firm in what they want to believe, or what they think is true, and that they will are way more likely to just go along with what authority figures in their lives are teaching them. Now, obviously, when it comes to in the home, if you want to raise your kids to have certain beliefs about the LGBT community, that's fine. Same thing, I guess, like against the LGBT community, but I just don't see it as a place for the school. Um, and I think it can be confusing for students. So that's my overall view on
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah, so yeah, we do disagree. I pretty much disagreed with everything you said there.
yeah.
But I guess first just for consistency's sake, do you think that the Bible also shouldn't be in elementary and middle schools?
I mean, I don't think it should be taught in any serious way other
Okay.
than
What about the Pledge of
this is.
Allegiance, for instance, where one nation under God that we make kids recite? Do you think that that is a no-no? That we're teaching them that they're in a
Oh,
nation under God?
yeah, I don't think that that should be forced to be said by any means stretch of the imagination.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. That was more for consistency's sake. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure logically it was consistent. Yeah, so my problem is, I guess, first with the characterization of LGBTQ as personal beliefs or like political beliefs or anything like that. I think in the same way that elementary school kids are taught about relationships and so like we go as little as when you read a story, a fantasy or what I can't think of what they're called, like a fairy tale, the prince and the princess, they'll get married or they fall in love at the end. Kids are read stories like this as early as elementary school, all throughout their childhood, and that's largely it serves, I mean, a couple purposes, but the purpose in terms of this conversation is the normalization of these things. You understand that typically when people grow up, they get in relationships, they could fall in love. Like these are things that happen. These are normal things for you to see adults do, people to do. I don't see any difference with normalizing that for same sex relationships also. I don't see a problem with a book, instead of a prince and a princess, having two princes fall in love. And I think that it would lead to a lot more normalization, whereas we see kids when they get older, when they haven't been introduced to the LGBTQ community throughout their childhood, they're more likely to do prejudice or discriminate. When I was a kid in high school, for instance, this is the example I had. When I was a kid in high school, in middle school, and I'm sure maybe you could relate too, it was almost normal. Like nobody even questioned calling the gay kid the F slur, right? Like it was just like, oh, like you would just call him that. They would be scared to go around the gay kid because, oh, I don't want to be made gay or whatever, right? Like this was like normal. And now in school, I mean, obviously people aren't saying the F slur, at least. Obviously, there's still stereotypes and stigmatization. People are still saying it, but it's not like you can just say it and it's fine, right? And I think that a lot of that is through the normalization of the LGBTQ community. So for me, and having a flag or having a teacher that has a shirt on or reading a story with two princes fall in love, it only serves to normalize something that is right now negatively stigmatized.
Yeah, and I guess my response to that would be I obviously understand that from the leftist and the liberal uh, uh, Democrat point of view that, oh, this isn't political, this is just, the right thing to do, this is just moral, whatever. But I personally think that that's just a disingenuous view because, like it or not, like It is
Sexuality
political.
is political?
Yeah, I mean, like it or not, unfortunately, it's something that is talked about within the political sphere, in my opinion, way too much. But let's not pretend like LGBT issues aren't at the forefront of American politics. I mean, they just are. It's something that we discuss weekly in this country, and it's very irritating that we do.
LGBTQ issues are at the forefront of LGBTQ people's minds.
That's also true, but I just mean, like, I mean, we've
We're
talked
not
about this
talking about like a
before.
political issue. We're talking about sexuality.
Yeah, that's a political issue,
So wait, okay,
unfortunately.
hold on. So are you saying your problem is only so much that it's talked about in politics? Like if politics never talked about LGBTQ, then it could be in schools?
If politics never talked about LGBTQ, then I don't think it would, nobody would be talking about it being in schools. That makes it political.
No. What?
Because,
No.
yeah, because the
No.
schools are run by the people. So as
No.
soon
Why
as
do you
it,
think sex education is in school?
what do you mean? Why do I think it's in there? Because the,
Because of politics?
yeah, because whoever makes the curriculum determined that that was something that kids needed to learn about, obviously.
I'm mind blown right now. You think,
Basically,
hold on, you think that things only get in school, like, so everything only gets in school for political reasons?
perhaps I'm using the word in a way that what I'm saying is anything that has to, once you leave the house,
Yeah.
like what I do with my family,
Yeah.
we're in politics now because now we're dealing with I'm making decisions and voting for things that are going to affect your kids and vice versa. As soon as you get into that realm, now we're in politics. Now we're talking about the social contracts and what we
No,
all
and
think
that's
is
weird. See,
normal
that
and
it almost seems like you're like saying that you don't want more people to be politically in favor of the LGBTQ because I don't know what down the line it might make them liberals. So you're willing to stigmatize LGBTQ people for that?
no, not well. First off, what I'm saying is there are people in this country
Yeah.
who have a stronger view on it than I do. Obviously, well, I haven't super shared my view, but you know, I have my own thoughts about the LGBT community. But there are people who have stronger views than I do, such as you know, gay marriage shouldn't be legal, for instance. That's not a view that I hold necessarily, but you know, there are people who think that. So that is a political issue because we're talking about
Right. Do you
governmental
think,
rights, and
hold
so
on, hold on, real quick
yeah,
though. Do you think the school has like an obligation to teach that that is a bad thing to think?
no.
Like for, okay, so then for racism, for instance, do you think that schools shouldn't teach that racism is bad?
Uh, Not necessarily.
Then what's the diff? Like
No, I mean not necessarily. No, they shouldn't necessarily teach that,
that's
uh,
insane.
depending on the age group, because I don't think that the schools exist to teach our children morality. I don't think
That's
that
crazy.
they
So if a
exist for that
if a
purpose.
white 4-year-old kid walked up to another black 4-year-old kid and was like, "You monkey N-word," you don't think that the teacher should be like, "Hey, like sometimes like you shouldn't you don't
Oh
call
well,
people like you shouldn't use a
yeah. I
racial
mean that,
slur to someone of a different
but
race."
so here's my yeah. I mean this is my thing with slightly off topic, but this is my things with like the idea of a hate crime. Killing somebody already a crime. Killing them because they're black, it's no more of a crime to me. I know you would disagree with that. It's you already killed somebody. So calling somebody a rude word already bad. Doesn't matter if it was the F slur. Doesn't matter if it was the N word. You just called somebody bad. So yes, should the school reprimand people for verbally accosting people? Yes.
You
The
know
content
why
of the
they
verbal accosting irrelevant because the issue was the verbal accosting, not the actual words used.
No,
It
no, no,
doesn't
no, no,
matter.
no, 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 because you're thinking reactively and you have to think proactively. And the reason is why you would differentiate these. Like a hate crime with a normal crime is that if you understand the motivating factor of something, you can then implement things to prevent it from happening the next time, right? There's antecedents to every behavior. You don't just want to let the behavior happen and then respond to it. You want to realize what caused the behavior, and then you want to do your best to remove that from the environment. So if you're in an environment like in a school and there's kids who are just verbally accosting each other and they're just saying, whatever, that's going to be a lot harder to stop than if you could pinpoint, okay, this white kid is specifically verbally accosting this black kid because of race, like because of racism or racism at the home, because obviously the 4-year-old himself is probably not like racist, awarely racist. But if you can
I
pinpoint
don't
that
know, those
motivating,
4-year-olds.
yeah, right. If you can pinpoint that motivating factor, however, you can better address the behavior. That's like what my entire job is, by the way, is a behavioral therapist. But
Okay, sure, but the problem is you
do you
are
see the
making
benefit in that, though?
potentially, but the problem is we're making assumptions that your view is the correct view, which is the problem. That's why I said it's a political issue. That's just the way that it is that not everybody agrees on this. This isn't something like murder where everyone agrees that murder is wrong. This is a
Hold on.
situation where
No,
people
because
have
now
differing
you're
views.
missing the forest for the trees, right? Racism is something everyone doesn't agree on. That's true, but race is inherent. It is an immutable characteristic, and that is why we don't allow people to be racist. Just because you have a
But
differing
we do
view.
allow people to be racist.
No, we're not like what do you mean? If somebody is
There's
racist,
no
they're going to
law
get
against being racist.
there's discrimination laws, right? Like you can't racially discriminate in hiring. You're not going to racially discriminate in housing and credit loans. You're not going
Sure,
obviously if you're racist like
there's
on the job.
discrimination law. Yeah, but there's no rule against like I can just I don't hold this view, don't clip this. I can think, oh, white people are less than, and that's not illegal.
Well, yes, but we don't allow you to act on those beliefs, right? We don't allow you to in public to
Well,
share the or like spread them to
within
others.
reason, yeah. I
Because
mean,
if
I
you
can
meet
go stand on a corner with a sign saying, whites are whack or something.
right, but well, the point is like if you were in school, for instance, like to keep it
Yes.
kind of to what we're talking, if you're in school, the teacher isn't going to let you're black, but the teacher isn't
Right.
going to let a white kid call you the N-word because he
Well,
doesn't like your race.
like I,
Sexuality is
but
also an
like
immutable
they wouldn't
characteristic.
let them call me stupid either. That's what I'm saying is there we already have
Right.
like this is already it's built in. We don't
Right,
need to single it out
but
for
the difference is again is how you prevent it the next time from happening. If you understand that racism is the motivating factor, you can implement measures to address the racism, which then could better address the attack. So with sexuality, if you understand that, hey, they're bullying this kid because he's gay, maybe if you can educate these kids on gay people are no different than you, they're humans just like you, they feel things just like
but
you.
but now you're putting your own morality into them, and that's
What
not.
morality? That humans deserve equality? Yes. I think that that is a perfectly fine moral
What do you mean?
position of
What
anyone.
morality? Yeah, that's what you just said
Human
is
equality? Yes.
no.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you could,
Indoctrinate
for
children
instance,
with human equality.
I would say bullying wrong approach. Uh, doesn't mean that I have to agree that, for instance, again, this isn't necessarily my view, but doesn't mean I have to agree that gay marriage should be legalized just because I think bullying's bad. Those aren't the same things. So I could say, yeah, I don't want my kids going around saying the F slur to other kids,
No,
but that
but
doesn't mean that I want my kids thinking that gay marriage should be legal.
no,
Those are,
you're no. It's
what do you
not
mean,
gay
no?
marriage. It's gay people like anyone else
Yeah,
deserve
I
love.
know, but
Deserve love. Yes or
gay,
no? Yes or no?
would you say what?
Do gay people deserve love like anyone else?
Nobody deserves love.
Well, then they deserve it the same as everyone else, right? Everyone
Nobody
deserves
deserves
love
it.
the same level,
You
right?
are lucky to get it if you do.
Well, what
I
I'm
don't
saying
think people
is even if
deserve love.
everyone doesn't deserve it, we all deserve it the same. We all don't deserve it then, the same amount, right? All of us are the same amount of undeserving of love, in your opinion.
Yes.
Okay, then why would you allow someone to discriminate on somebody loving
Well,
someone
again, this is
just
where
because they're
there's
gay?
it's nuanced. I'm not saying so. My issue would be with in telling them, for instance, like saying, I gotta be careful. I'm not trying to.
If a
Actually,
teacher,
you know what?
if
No, I'll be open about my views. I won't hide them. For instance, I'm a Catholic. People won't have to use their imagination too much more than that to know what my view is on LGBT issues. I think it's disordered. I don't think not disordered like a medical disorder, but disordered. It's a whole thing about teleology. But so I don't think that it's quote unquote normal in the sense that I think it should be the norm or the status quo. I don't think it's
that's
something that we
fine though, but
should
all science
promote.
disagrees with you, right? Like you wouldn't say like, well, in my Bible,
Fine.
God could walk on the water. So let's make people walk on water. I
Hey,
think we understand that
well,
all science is disagreeing with your religious beliefs, that your religious beliefs really don't matter that much.
well, like I said, I'm not saying that it's not natural. as in it's not something that
Seen in
happens.
nature, yeah, it's natural for sure.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not natural. I'm saying it's not normal. Very different. Pedophilia also natural. And no, I'm not saying oh, gay people and pedophiles are the same. No, I'm just saying that they're both things that are natural that they have no control over. But I don't think that that just automatically means it's fine. That's a fallacy. That's natural, not the naturalism fallacy. But so yes, I do think it's
I
natural
think
in
it's
the
both
sense that
natural
it's.
and normal.
But I
Personally.
don't. So yeah, my view would just be, you know, for instance, do I think my that we should love them? Yes. Do I think we should
Okay,
treat them like everybody
here's
else?
my question. Here's my question. If we knew for an absolute fact that teachers teaching kids that gay people are normal lowered hate or like homophobic acts towards gay people, would you think that that was the right thing to do? Should teachers teach that? If we knew, like in a hypothetical where we knew them teaching that gay people are normal led to less discrimination against gay people, is that the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do?
Uh, you're not gonna like my answer to that. It's the wrong thing to do because I'm not a
Okay, no,
consequentialist. The
I
ends
haven't.
do not
Okay, hold on.
justify the
No,
means. Just
that opens a
because,
whole. No, I have a whole nother. Hold on.
yeah.
What is the purpose that education serves for you?
The purpose that education serves is to prepare people to be adults.
Okay, and the sociological application
Well, that's why I said I think I'm
doesn't
totally
matter to
fine.
you.
No, I'm totally fine with treat everybody with respect, love your neighbor as yourself, basic
So
moral.
I just don't get in that hypothetical though. If education for you is to prepare kids to be adults, and in that hypothetical, you would be preparing them to have better adult lives. I mean, who's to say they're not going to end up being the gay person? It would lower
Sure.
discrimination. They're not going to be doing discrimination. So,
Well,
like, what
again,
part of that doesn't follow for
I'm
your
fine.
logic?
I'm fine with teaching against discrimination. I'm fine with teaching against
What? So then, what do you think? Like,
bullying and being.
what do
What
you
I'm
think
not fine.
LGBTQ awareness and education in school is? Do you think they're like, you're gay, you're
No,
straight,
no, no. What
you're
I told.
trans,
What's a the step too far is this is normal. This is good. You don't need to say any of that. You just need to say
but it is normal?
you just need to say not giving people food when you own a restaurant because they're gay is bad. Doing this is bad. We don't have to talk about what's good. We just need to talk about what are bad things to not do, which
So
is
you talk
to
about these people exist. These people
yes,
deserve the same
they
rights as everyone else.
we
These
yeah, we should
people,
treat them with we should treat them with respect.
these
You
people are no
shouldn't blah blah blah
different.
blah blah.
These people
Whether
are no
you think
different than anyone
being
else.
well, I mean, everybody's different from everybody else, so I don't know what that means. But
Like, would you have a problem with a first grade class reading a story, a fairy tale where two princes end up falling in love rather than a prince and a princess?
yes,
Why?
because that's presenting it as normal or good.
So, but you wouldn't have a problem with it
They don't
being,
have the nuance of knowing that
you
that
wouldn't
just
have a
means
problem
they
with it being a
exist.
prince and a princess, though.
No, because I think
That's
that's
homophobic. That is
it,
100%
it might
homophobic. There's nothing, and I'm not judging you for
it might
that,
be,
but like,
but
there's nothing but that it couldn't be. Neither are normal. I don't think you could,
well,
it's
I disagree with
sexuality.
that. That's the part that we disagree on. That's why I'm saying it's just a ideological,
There's not a
political.
disagreement to be had there.
But there is. I think it is
What is the
normal.
disagreement?
I think it is normal, and you think it's not. We
No, I think
disagree.
it's normal in terms of same sex relationships,
Oh,
and you think it's not.
I think a prince and a princess is normal. You just said that's not normal.
I think love is normal. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think a prince and a princess is normal. So
Why?
that's a difference.
What is normal? Could you define normal? I know we're getting close to
Yeah,
the end, but
touching on not to get too philosophical, teleology, things have natural ends. This microphone is for recording sound. I can use it to bludgeon somebody's head open, but that's not what it's for. It has its intent and purpose.
so you're saying relationships are for reproduction?
Uh, and for the benefit of the spouses, yeah.
So then what if like they can't reproduce? Should they not? Is that also just not normal to be in a
They're
relationship if you can't reproduce?
no, so they have the capacity. They are ordered towards that.
No, what
It's
if they
it,
don't have the capacity?
it's their natural end, is what I should say. Like in
That just,
in essence
I
of
don't think
being
that
a
follows
man,
any logical track at all.
and
If you were
in
born
lieu
without
of
the ability,
being for instance, me being a human means that I am supposed to have 10 fingers. I might have 11 because I might have some sort of disease or something, but I'm supposed to have 10. And so in that supposed to, that same way of thinking, it's supposed to be man and woman. It's supposed to be.
According to what?
Whether according to nature, according to reality.
That's not
P
true.
P P
That's
and
not true.
V.
That's not
P
true.
and V.
That's not true.
P and
Same-sex
V.
relationships are in nature. They're seen all over nature.
Again, so is 10-fingered or 11-fingered humans, but that's not normal.
No, but you said that what made man and woman normal, one of the things you said was
Yeah, the standard.
It's in nature. So is same sex. So is man and man. So is woman and woman, or male and male,
Not
female and
that it's
female.
in nature, but that it is the natural way to be. It's the
That's
standard
an
way.
unprovable statement. But I mean, okay.
Is it unprovable that humans are supposed to have 10 fingers?
Yeah, I think you could maybe say that's unprovable. I mean, maybe it's provable with
So you'd have
skeleton.
a problem with them teaching in like a fourth grade science class, humans have 10 fingers and 10 toes. You'd be like, no, we got to
I
tell
would
them
say
that
you
people
should
could
probably
have.
use the word typically, right? I would
Okay.
say the correct way to teach
And
that
so
would
it's
be.
not a disorder or a sickness if you have 11. There's nothing wrong. That's not the way everything went correctly.
I mean, well, if we're talking about like semantically, yeah, like we would call that a disorder, but I don't know if that's like natural, like you know what I mean? Like to say that we're supposed to, I would say that that's what we in our society have ordained, yeah, right?
I think
But
that's crazy. No, I've obviously
I
humans,
also don't think
we
that's
know the
like
genetic.
that is debatable on if it's a provable or disprovable statement, because like there are ways, maybe if you go to like the skeletal makeup, I'm sure there's maybe ways. I just don't know the like the biological makeup enough. In terms of it should be man and woman, that is an unprovable statement. That is absolutely unprovable. There's
I
no way to
mean,
prove that.
agree to disagree on that one. But my
How would you
point
prove it?
is,
How would you prove that?
same way with biology and
That is
the
supposed to be
logic.
man and woman falling in love. How do you, that's not even that's not biological.
Well, first off, falling in love, that's not necessarily what I'm saying, but anybody can fall in love.
Well, we were talking about relationships and you said
Yes,
it's to
falling in
reproduce.
love, yeah, but I also falling in love is like 1/3 of a marriage. It's like a part, it's
But
an important part of it.
man and woman relationship, you said
Yes.
that is what's supposed to be. How do you prove that? I don't think that's provable.
Again, I think you appeal to biology and you appeal to things natural
What
and
part of biology is what I'm asking? What
P and
biological thing
P
tells you
and
that man
V,
and
bro.
woman? What?
Reproduction, P and V,
What if
like I
you're
said.
born? Yes, but then okay, what if you're literally
But
born
like I said, then you're just
incapable of
you're the
reproduction?
11-fingered person.
There's not equatable at all. 11
It's a
people,
problem. It's a disorder. You would go to the doctor
that's
and they
not
would say,
true.
"Sorry,
People
you
being
have."
born with 11 fingers is not equatable to a woman or a man being born without being able to reproduce. Those two things
It's
are
literally
not,
equatable.
no,
They're so much equatable. They're literally disorders. It's something that went wrong that's not supposed to be. A woman should be able to have children. She's
no,
supposed to be able to
no,
have them.
and the likeliness is
Yes.
completely different. The percent of people born with 11 fingers is probably pretty low. The percent of people born with the inability to reproduce is like, that is like a common thing. There's
I mean,
plenty of
it's
people who
not
don't have the
overly
ability to
common.
reproduce.
I mean, yeah, you and me. But no, yeah, I just think that yeah, there's a blueprint for what a human being is supposed to be in a lot of ways. We're supposed to walk up right on 2 feet. We're not
Sure,
supposed to walk on all fours. We're supposed
biologically,
to grow
yes.
hair. If you don't have any hair on your body, that's a
Sociologically, no.
disorder. Alopecia. Like these
Biologically,
things.
there are ways, but sociologically, there's not a way humans are ought to be. That's insane. That's insanity.
Well, biological informs the sociological.
No, that's not true at all either.
What do you mean, brother?
Have you
Yes, it
ever
does.
what you think biology drives society? You think everything society does is because of biological application? Why do humans drink?
Yes.
Why do humans drink?
Drink?
When
Like
they know that it
alcohol?
will kill them, when they know that it will kill them either directly or in long term. That's biologically would not be the thing to do. If we based everything we do societally
You're
off
thinking of like
biology,
survival of the fittest or
I'm
something.
thinking
I'm
of
just
sociology. Sociology is why people in society act the way they do. You said that was driven by biology.
it's
That's
by
not.
both because
It's not.
yeah,
I've
all of
studied
our
sociology.
no, because all
Me
of our
too.
decisions are for instance, the reason I decided to come and be a part of this podcast is because partially by my environment, the way I was raised, and
Mm.
partially who fundamentally on a DNA level that I am, that I like debating and that I like this, or I was more inclined to that, paired with the way I was raised. It's nature and nurture at the same time that create everything. The only reason, I have a low temperament of not getting angry easily is paired between how I was raised and how my genetics are. I might have more testosterone, which would make me angrier easier,
Yeah.
or
How you were
lesser.
raised just is society.
Yes,
Yeah,
but how you were
biology
raised, they only raised
biology
you that
does
way
not
because of their
drive
biology.
most decisions in society are not
No,
driven by biology. That's just insane.
no.
That would say that people would
Your
only
brain
have sex.
controls
People
everything.
would only have sex to reproduce then. One,
No,
because
your
that is the
brain controls.
biological
You're
application of sex.
misunderstanding. You're
There's
straw
a
man.
what?
Straw man. What I'm
No,
saying
you're
is
saying no, because you're saying sociology is driven by biology.
is your brain in charge of the decisions you make? Yes. Is that biologically a part of you? Yes.
No, no, no,
Does
no,
what you
no,
eat
no, no, no,
affect
no,
your
no,
mood?
no, no. And that's
Yes.
actually, wait, hold on. That is a huge debate in soft science is how much of
Oh
your
my.
decisions are driven by psychology versus sociology. That is actually a big debate. How much is driven by impulses in your brain, how your brain is wired neurologically versus just where you are in society, how you think people view you, how you think people in
Yes.
your position should
Yes.
act, how society acts. Your decisions are
You
driven
got to take
by
it a step further back though.
for
Why
what?
are you interpreting the way people are acting towards you in that way? It's the only way you can interpret it because it's the only way that your brain will allow you
No,
to, which, yes. And the way,
no,
I mean, we know you should
no.
have had a Snickers. You're angry. You get in a bad mood. And now, when you're in a bad mood, you make this set of decisions that you wouldn't have made if you had just eaten that Snickers. And so it's all by how your brain is responding to the environment. It's a dance back and forth between what's happening externally and what's happening internally, communicating back and forth.
Yeah,
So
to be
its
clear,
biology is involved in all of it.
in some things, and most things, in terms of decisions made in society, biology
I
plays
don't
no part in it.
understand. I can't.
People
I can't agree. That doesn't make any sense.
people have sex for non-biological reasons. Yes or no?
Okay, so I think
Yes or no? Do people have sex for
I
completely
don't know.
non-biological
I don't know
reasons?
how you're using the phrase for biological reasons. I think we're
The
disagreeing on how to use that
biological
phrase.
purpose of sex, the reason that I have a sexual
That's not. Yeah, that's not what I'm.
sexual reproductive organ and that a woman does is to reproduce, right? So to
Yes,
have sex for
but
non-reproductive
I'm.
reasons
Yes, I'm
is to
not
go
saying.
against the biology.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Because your biology also is to do it for fun.
No, no,
What? We're
no,
biologically what?
no,
What?
no,
Yes, we
no,
enjoy getting our rocks off.
no. You think people were
Biologically,
made biologically means before influence, before you acquired the taste for sex because you had sex and wanted to have it more. You were born innately wanting to just have sex for fun. That's what you think?
well, we didn't know what the concept of fun was, but
Exactly. Well, fun is a social construct.
doing it because it feel good, yes. I mean,
No.
that's prob. I mean, we were probably biologically
Okay,
drawn towards.
then why are people asexual? If biologically it feels good and they're not, why are they asexual? There's asexual people. In any
Again, you
instance that
want.
you go to,
Yeah, you
there's
won't agree with me, but I would 11-fingered man. I would say
yeah,
yeah, there are
I
people
think
who
that's
are
just
off
insane.
the no,
Yeah,
I don't want to call it straight and narrow like that, but like
yeah,
the
yeah,
normal path. And then there are variations, of course, in the gene
yeah.
pool
No,
and how
and
people manifest. But there is a
no,
norm,
no,
which is
that's insanity.
it's not. These are just biological realities. I'm actually surprised to hear you say that your brain doesn't. I don't understand how you can think that your brain is not in control of like where did the thought to even say this sentence come from? It came from my brain. I didn't decide consciously I'm going to say these words. Everything that I've
Yes,
experienced in my
yes,
life,
but what is
including my
influencing?
DNA, is what led me to
You're
saying these
putting
exact
the egg
words.
before the, or you're putting the chicken before the egg, or whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
Why is your brain thinking that way? It's because
Because
of
of
the
two things.
environment, because of
Because of
society.
yes, but
Yes.
also because of how my brain finds itself to currently be in this exact moment. It could have been different if I
And
maybe
your
even if
brain
I
is
had
that way because of society.
in part, but
Okay.
DNA too. Like our brains form in certain ways. Like, I mean, obviously you can like have developmental issues where you have like, um, that one guy who just had like a brainstem. Like my
Yeah, but
brain
wouldn't
is
that
just
be
the
a
way.
disorder? Wouldn't that be a disorder so it doesn't matter to you? Because like disorders don't matter.
I didn't say disorders don't matter. I'm just
That's what you
saying
said about everything that I said. That you
no,
said
I
about
didn't say they
disorders.
didn't matter. I just said that
It's
they
the
were
11 fingered
disorders.
man. What you're bringing up is the 11 fingered man. So who cares?
No, you're missing what I'm saying. I think I'm just
Well, you just
saying,
said somebody with a disability, right? That's the 11 fingered man.
yeah, but I don't see how that's relevant to what I'm saying right now. What
He's
I'm
like, who
trying to
cares?
say, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant. At least that's if that's how it came across.
No, I'm just being a
Uh,
dick.
Basically, what I'm saying is, yes, of course, my environment influences it.
Do you think it influences it more or less?
I don't think it's calculable. I think
Really?
every time your environment affects
Hmm.
your brain, that fundamentally changes your biology. It
I think it's
changes
yeah,
your
no.
brain
I
and the
think
way.
it's pretty
Like, do
laid
you not
out.
agree with the Snickers example?
What was it again?
There, the commercials, the
Mhm.
guy's like in a bad mood because he needs a Snickers or whatever, because you will act differently and your brain will respond differently to stimuli because of lack of food. And so eating food you isn't just a social thing, like it's to survive, it's a biological necessity to eat.
Mhm.
And so your brain doesn't function as well, and that's all biological. I haven't mentioned anything about social yet. So
Yes.
like me deciding to break up with my wife or something might literally
Mm,
be because I didn't eat and my brain is not working the way it's supposed to be, paired with how I
no.
grew up.
No, see, that's where you're losing it is now you're adding in non-biological things, and then you're just filling in the blank here with it must have been biology. No, the way you respond to being angry is sociological in and of itself. It's you respond to anger how you've seen other people respond to anger, maybe your parents when you were young.
Yes.
How just based off your own experiences responding to anger and then the responses you get, like
Yes.
if somebody is mad at you and then you scream at the top of your lungs and then everyone looks at you like you're weird, you might not do that again. But if somebody does you wrong and you respond in a way and everyone's like, you're such a hero, like you're more likely to respond that way. So
Yes.
yes, feeling the anger, biological. What drives
Yes.
the behavior from that feeling though, entirely sociological.
But then where I would take it a step further is now those experiences, I'll use this word, I don't mean it literally, are
Mhm.
now grafted into my biology and into my brain, and therefore are now the new baseline from where I will progress. And so that's why I said it's a dance between what's happening in nature and nurture and environment with in nurture with what's happening in nature, because it goes back and forth. And there's even studies, I don't remember what it's called, but there's even studies that they've done about these things being passed down to your children and your children's children's experiences that get grafted into your DNA and that being passed down. And so it's not as black and white as just it's not like everyone's just a blob, a blank blob when they're born, and everyone's just starting as gray, and then you start adding stuff in. There's
I
stuff
think
that's
you
in
are.
there in your DNA from your lineage and
Mhm.
from the experiences that they all went through. For instance, cortisone spikes or whatever throughout pregnancies, if they're in a stressful situation, will affect your biology and how you're being formed in the womb. And now you're a certain temperament because your mom grew up in a war-torn country or something, and
Yeah,
they've proven these things.
and that's biology, but then
But it's also sociology because the
how
war-torn
you
country part.
no, not at that point because it's been passed down to you. You never experienced the war. At that point, it's completely like genetically passed down to you, which I would also need to
But
see the study to
through
see
sociology,
through
because she
sociology.
experienced it socially, the warring. That's
Yeah,
what I'm
no,
saying.
and to that point, I do agree. I guess if that's what you're trying to say, that sociological things or like things that happen in
They're
society
intertwined. That's what
can
I'm trying to
change your
say.
psychology or the way that you psychologically view things or want to like think about stuff. But the driving force for behavior, in my opinion, in most sociologists' opinion, is sociology. I think more so than nurture or nature, more so than like how your brain's hardwired or anything like that. I think people typically, I think the biggest driving force is the self-reflecting mirror. People typically will respond in a way that they think society views them. If they think society views them as this, you're more likely to do this. If you think that society views you as something to do this, you're more likely to do this. I think that that is
One
one of,
point
yeah.
on that. But don't you think the being the type of person who is quote most likely to go off of if society thinks I'm going to do this versus the person who says screw society, do you not think that there's some level of that personality difference
Mhm.
that comes from who they are biologically, both how they were just born, but also at any given time. Like I said, with the food, eating,
Yeah.
whatever and that's what I'm saying is it's not as simple as just you want to reflect society, but why do you want
Yeah.
to?
I agree. I just
Some
think it's
people
like
just do, and some
90
people just
10.
don't.
I think it's like
That's what I'm
90
saying.
10. I think that sociology
Fine.
drives like 90% of behavior, and I think that like psychology or biology might drive like maybe 10%. And I don't even know if I would say that about biology. I don't know to the extent that biology would drive outside of like um the specific examples, like somebody with depression or born with anxiety or something that obviously is going to change your behavior. So I would say, yeah, like maybe like biology could drive like 5 to 10% of behavior. Psychology probably drives around 10% of behavior. And then I think that sociology drives the overwhelming amount.
And I would say biology determines your psychology. Therefore, it all comes back to biology. But
I don't
continue.
think there's anything to support that statement. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this debate, I feel like we've debated 3 things in this debate.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
went on to like psychology versus sociology, but it was about LGBTQ at first, you know. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed that, we record these every week, Wednesdays, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back next Wednesday. Sorry that we missed last Wednesday. We do our best here. Yeah, so until next time, peace.
Peace.
Appreciate you, Schwa.
Yes, sir. Lively debate today.
I know, right? We got multiple topics. Hey, if you through the week, if you see any topics that you want to
Yeah. I'll be on the lookout this week.
bet,
My wife ended up going to New York, and I on Thursday morning, and I
yeah,
found out on Wednesday at like 11 p.m. It was crazy. So I had to figure out like
what you're
the
gonna do all
kids for the
day
whole
and
weekend, and I had 8-hour shifts, and so I had to call in Grandpa, and my sister came from Wisconsin to take. It was crazy,
crazy
but
week. Yeah,
luckily
well,
my wife got to go spend time with her best friend for a bridal shower. So
that's good.
happy to make the sacrifice, but it was just
Yes,
like
Dad of the
very,
year.
very crazy. Nah, bare minimum, bare minimum.
That's funny. Yeah,
All right, bro.
but yeah,
Peace. I
till
gotta get to
next week,
work.
my man.
Yep.
See ya.